So, what if you could actually unlock the entire intellectual DNA of a civilization just from a single document? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to follow the thread from ancient philosophy all the way to modern science, just by unpacking a simple list of names that tells this epic story of India's greatest thinkers. The source for this whole explainer is, believe it or not, incredibly simple. This isn't some 1,000-page historical textbook or a complex academic paper. Nope, it's just one document with a list of names. But as you're about to see, this list, it's like a universe of ideas hiding in plain sight. Just look at this. Valmiki, Aryabhatta, Kabir, Shankara, Chanakya. The names just fly by. It's like looking at a massive mountain range of intellect from a speeding train. The scale of it is just staggering. We're talking about thousands of years of philosophy, science, art, spirituality, all wrapped up in these names. So here's the puzzle, right? How can a simple list of names possibly unlock the story of an entire culture? Well, to answer that, you have to start looking for the patterns, the hidden connections. So let's start at the very beginning with the architects of belief. Okay, first up, the spiritual architects. These are the thinkers who laid the absolute bedrock of philosophy and spirituality for an entire subcontinent. Their ideas have been echoing from millennia. What's so amazing when you dig into these names is that there was never just one way of thinking. Take the Buddha and Mahavir, for example. They were around at the same time. One was talking about a middle path, a path of moderation. The other advocated for really rigorous self-denial and nonviolence. So right from the get-go, this wasn't a monologue. It was a full-on debate about the best way to live. And this evolution of ideas, it wasn't a one-off thing. You can see it happening over centuries, even inside a single school of thought like Vedanta. Our list shows this incredible progression from Shankaracharya's idea of pure non-dualism to a qualified version a few hundred years later, and then to a totally different theory of dualism. This table isn't showing confusion. It's showing a living, breathing philosophical conversation that unfolded over 500 years. But hey, it wasn't all just about philosophy and the soul. This intellectual legacy wasn't confined to the metaphysical. The list also points to this powerful tradition of looking at the material world. These are the pioneers of science and logic. Just look at the incredible range we've got here. Our list points to foundational figures in astronomy, surgery, and even linguistics. The thing that connects all of them is this absolute drive for systematic inquiry. Take Panini. He didn't just describe the Sanskrit language. He coded its grammar with a logic so precise, people have compared it to a modern computer programming language. That shows you there's this deep-seated tradition of analyzing the world and figuring out how it all works. And they didn't just point that analytical lens at the stars or the human body. It was turned on society itself. A perfect example from our list is Chanakya. This guy wasn't some philosopher sitting up in an ivory tower. He was a political strategist, an economist, basically systematically breaking down the machinery of how a country runs, from tax policy all the way to military strategy. Okay, so you have all these complex ideas floating around, both spiritual and scientific. But how do they actually reach the average person? Well, that's where our next group from the list comes in, the people's poet saints. These were the great communicators, the ones who translated profound philosophy into devotion, poetry, and song for the masses. The absolute genius of this movement was how it just bypassed the intellectual elites. People like Kabir, Mirabai, Guru Nanak, they weren't writing in complex, formal Sanskrit. As you can see, they used the languages of the people, Hindi, Rajasthani, Punjabi, to talk about really radical ideas, like the oneness of God, social equality, pure devotion. They basically made philosophy something everyone could be a part of. And you really can't overstate the impact. The list reminds us of people like Tulsidas, whose version of the Ramayana epic became the version for hundreds of millions of people. Or Surdas, whose poetry is still sung today. These thinkers didn't just explain the culture, they were actively creating it. So, did this incredible river of ideas just dry up a few hundred years ago? Not even close. Our list shows exactly how this legacy kept going, adapting and evolving right into the modern era. You can actually see this clear pattern on the timeline. The tradition moves from internal social reform in the 19th century to being introduced to the whole world with figures like Swami Vivekananda, and then finally it's reinterpreted for a global audience in the 20th century. The core ideas are still there, but their application and their audience just keep expanding. The conversation literally never stopped. Which, brings us right back to our source document. It ends with this really simple but powerful statement. These are significant contributors and sources for a comprehensive understanding of Indian culture. That's not just a claim, it's the conclusion we've just seen for ourselves by exploring the patterns inside this list. So, in the end, what have we really seen here? From ancient sages to modern masters, from spiritual architects to scientific pioneers, this was never just a list of names. It's like a living source code, a set of foundational ideas and debates that are still running, still compiling, and still executing in the culture of today. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. If this rich, complex, and diverse intellectual heritage is the source code, what questions should we be asking with it today? What new programs are we writing?